Well, hello everyone. Ivana Taylor here, your host for the Monday edition of Bizapalooza Chat, where we plug into trends and strategies that are going to help you grow your business. Today's Bizapalooza Chat is all about hashtag brand, hashtag integrity, messaging, how to pull it all together. And for all of that, I have reached out to my old friend, Lisa Manyon. She ain't old, but she is a friend that I've had for a while. And Lisa's going to share all her tips and strategies, why you should listen to her, because she is the master of matching your message to your market using copywriting and content. And she has been on a complete soapbox about integrity. So let's everyone welcome Lisa Manyon. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, it's so great to be here. This is going to be a blast.
It is. I'm so happy to have you because I have been on this integrity bug lately. This is the first show of 2017, and integrity has been just such a big topic, not just for brands, but for communicating overall. It's an issue. We are skeptical.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right? So talk a little bit about, because you're a branding and messaging expert. What's that got to do with integrity?
Well, it actually has everything to do with integrity. And this is why I kind of got on the integrity kick, is because, seriously, our brand is the promise we make to the world. And if we're not living that brand and we're not really seriously doing what we say we're going to do, that's an issue. And there's a lot of that.
Gotcha. Hey, I got a quick thing to tell you.
Okay.
I got a note that says I'm not getting echo from you, but someone is hearing echo from you.
Okay.
I did not know because I don't have it. So I don't know do you have a headset or do you have to run
You know
out?
what? I don't. For some reason, it actually just recently broke and I haven't had any problem with any feedback.
Maybe it'll just go away. Maybe it's just a thing. Okay, never mind. Tech issue resolved. Hey, I want to tell everyone that if you are tweeting, you've got to tweet along with the hashtag Bizapalooza Chat. Follow the chat along. I want to make sure I tell the folks who are online that they could listen to us live.
Yes.
Watch us now. Let's tell them that. And you can, let's keep talking about integrity and branding and how it has everything to do one with the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so many people get it confused. They're not aligning everything. And I think that's really where it comes together and where it's really important to take a deep look at that. And so many people, especially when it comes to branding and marketing and integrity, sometimes those terms all mixed together get a little confusing for people, especially because what I have found over, a couple of decades of playing in this arena is that people don't understand that marketing is really not that difficult. It's about building relationships and building trust. And that is why you have to have brand integrity.
So let's talk a little bit about defining integrity, because there are a few definitions and you and I have had this conversation. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you bet. Well, the simplest way to describe it is that it's basically doing the right thing when no one else is watching, right? And I didn't coin that term. I can't even remember who said it in the very beginning, but a lot of people use that kind of as a gauge and a framework. And I think that's very true. But the interesting thing about integrity is that integrity is based on our individual values, which are shaped by our worldviews. And so what may seem like integrity to me may be different to you based on your values and your worldview.
I think that's such a great point, right? Because I think the common, what do they say? Oh my gosh, now it's leaving me. The context or the connotation of the word integrity, people think that integrity equals honesty. And I don't see it that way. I see these two things. Yes, it's nice when it does, but I see these things as being sort of not the same thing. Integrity as a word means whole and complete.
Right.
Complete, right? Which is why what you were saying is what's going on. Someone can be a complete jerk and lie all the time and still have integrity because they don't change.
Well, and also because in their mind, they are being honest because that's who they are. And that behavior is actually in alignment with their values, or some might say lack thereof. But if that's what's important to them, when we look at it, our values are what matters most to us, right? And so we can't determine what matters most to one another. We can discover that through communication, but it really is a very individual thing, and it's shaped by so many different things, by society, by families, by the news, by friends, by everything in our culture. So it is a really interesting and juicy topic.
Okay, so I think you were saying earlier that when we're talking about brand integrity, let's define that a little bit. So I've seen it defined a bunch of different ways. What does it mean to you?
Well, to me, it really is not only the promise that you make to the world, but delivering on that promise. It's that simple. I think we complicate things, and sometimes people are so confused just by the term branding that they don't know, what that means, and they let that get in the way when it isn't that difficult. Do what you say you're going to do, stand for your brand, make sure that you really are infusing your values in what it is that you're sharing, and don't waver.
Mm. Right. And that's where the integrity comes in, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit. I know we're jumping ahead, but I know that we're going to be, going all over. That's the beauty of being on the chat on the video side. We talked a little bit about the difference between integrity and honesty. Let's keep talking about that because I know that that is an open topic. What's the difference to you?
Well, honesty is telling the truth. And again, the truth varies depending on the person who is telling that story, right? And integrity is really embodying everything that you say and do. So it's very, very much being in full alignment.
So full alignment, meaning you do what you say what you do, your thoughts and actions all work together. Yay, Ken has joined us. He says, integrity is about holding to one's ethos. But what the hell is brand integrity? Can a brand even have an ethos? I love that question.
That's nice. That's nice.
What do you think? Can a brand have an ethos?
I think that I don't know that the brand specifically has that. That's a really great perspective. I think that you're able to create that essence based on how you represent a brand. But it was really interesting. I was teaching a class called The Power of Publicity recently for the local Small Business Development Center. And I had a person talking about branding and how it was absolutely paramount, they thought in their mind, to keep all of your personal stuff on a separate account on social media and have a specific one for business. And I said yes and no, and she was kind of confused. And here's what I meant by that. I said, look, I'm the one with the personality. My brand is not going to go have a glass of wine with you.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, we are a part of the brand, whether we want to be or not. And our brand can stand for or be a visual representation and demonstrate by the actions that we put forth in the world within that brand a little bit more about, who we are and what we do. But the truth is, I think they're very much intertwined. And so that's why so many people, especially on social media, and I use that example for a very specific reason. On social media, people want to know who we are. Even though I use Right On Creative as my handle, and clearly my name is Lisa Manyon, they're very much interchangeable, and people understand that and know that, and they want to know who is behind the brand and what we stand for as people. Because if, for instance, I was not walking my talk and I was simply just saying that I do all these things that I say that I do and not delivering on those promises, there would be a complete disconnect and there would be no brand integrity whatsoever.
So Ken asked a really good question. I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but I'm going to ask it anyway before I lose it. Mm-hmm. What if your integrity clashes with that of your brand? He says he's asking for a friend.
I would need more specifics on that. So, I guess what I think there can be a problem. And here's an example that I'll share. For example, if you have a brand that stands for sustainability and green living, and you are not at all conscious and you don't recycle and you don't do any of the things that a sustainable business does, I'd say there's some major misalignment there. So that could be an issue for sure. I mean, if you're running a company and you're not walking the talk, you're going to lose trust and credibility.
Exactly. So, and we're speaking, and I definitely want to be clear about this. We're speaking from the perspective of a small business. And I sort of have a story about that, which is small businesses. And honestly, I've even seen some really large businesses who are very much a reflection of the founder and the owner and their value and their ethos and their level of integrity. So,
yes.
Those two kind of go together. So if you, I'm kind of curious, if you are the founder and you've created some type of brand messaging that doesn't match your integrity, you're going to have a problem.
You are going to have a problem. I mean, I don't see how you couldn't, and I don't know why people aren't paying closer attention to this. And actually, what's interesting is I think people kind of are, and they're just not talking about it that much, because when you run across someone that is not in alignment, it's not super fun. We've all been disappointed. We've all been promised something at one point or time in our lives and business and not had that promise followed through. And so while it's true that people may share that experience, what I'm finding more and more is that people are kind of just stepping back and walking away and not playing with the people who are not upholding the integrity.
Great point. Great point. I tweeted that to Ken. Oh my gosh, we've had so much conversation. Let me see. So you could see I'm just plowing.
Yeah, I'm looking in here too. I was watching you talk because I love to hear what you're saying, and now I'm going in to see what everyone's saying.
Yeah, go and see what other folks are saying. Well, I guess we were talking about this in just a little bit ago. The question that's coming up is, what role does your personal integrity play with your brand messaging? And I think, Ken, this speaks to your point, right? Where if your brand and your message has to be a reflection, and I think in the business parlance, this is where the values comes in, beliefs, values, those kinds of things. Talk a little bit about that, especially when it comes to messaging.
Well, I mean, I think everything has to be based on your values, period. That's really important. In fact, one of the things that I talk to my clients a lot about is their values and making sure that they're basing everything they do on those values and being of true service. And oftentimes where there's the very, very big disconnect is when the values are not at all in alignment with the mission statement of the business, right? And so this is where we get into that personal brand and what's the difference between a personal brand and a business brand, really? And I say they're very much the same. They can be different, of course, because we all have our own personal style and things like that, but they have to be, they're of equal importance. Let me just put it that way. They're of equal importance, and you must really be clear about what your values are and make sure that it's in alignment. And if not, reassess your values, and you may need to course correct a little bit. That's perfectly okay. But what's most important is that you're delivering upon the promises that you've set forth, and that's how you build the integrity to start with. Because if you're not able to do that and there's a disconnect, business just won't be sustainable.
Great point. And this is where we're going to have like a little bit of a conversation, right? There is sometimes, and I see this in companies all the time, when it comes to stating values, they state the values that they think they're supposed to state. Like, for example, we're in the new year, right? So I'm supposed to say that I value my health, but then there are the values that I actually take action on, which is like eating a cream-filled donut.
Right.
So there are things that we're committed to, that we say that we're committed to, but then there are the actions that we take that truly find out what we're committed to. And I always like to say, if you want to know what matters to you, check out your credit card statement, because that tells you where your time and money goes.
That's very true. And, another thing too is that if you're not in alignment, like that's something you can course correct. You're going to eat a donut. That's okay. It's not the end of the world, really. But there are some bigger things out there that really can impact and influence things. I'm not going to stop being your friend because you ate a donut, right?
Right.
And I'm more than happy to still play with you. I might have a donut on occasion, even though I eat pretty clean. But what's happening, and a lot of times I'm seeing this in some larger organizations and corporations that have grown that are really kind of struggling to hold on to their brand identity, their brand integrity, and their core messaging being in alignment with that. And an example, I was just recently researching a company because I do some consulting with larger companies as well in their communications department and things like that. So I was researching a company to see if I wanted to play with them. I'm not going to name any names because that just would not be kind, and I'll have a conversation with the people I need to have a conversation with. But I was looking at all their communications that come out, including job postings. And specifically in the description of a job posting, it said that it was a high stress environment, that you needed to work long hours, it was fast paced, and you were going to experience frequent interruptions. And I thought, I need to talk to them about this because that's not going to attract clients. And not only that, part of their values and their mission was the health and well-being of their employees and their team. So there was a direct disconnect in their brand integrity right there. And you know what? They probably don't even realize it because they're not looking at the big brand picture. That they had hired somebody to write the job description who's in probably some department that doesn't even understand how that impacts the brand image. So immediately they lost trust with me just in that, which actually had nothing to do with the project I might have been helping them with. However, it could expand the project now that I think about it.
Exactly.
Right.
And I want to mention a comment that Amir Kendich made. He said, if you're an honest person by nature, it will show in your business as well. How true is that?
Yes.
Because not to get like all hashtag wacky woo woo on everybody, right? But I really do think when I see certain messages, when I see marketing messages or branding messages, I could almost feel or tell that they've done the work. Or
yes.
I can almost feel that authenticity versus stuff that just seems like rote or whatever. What's going on there? What am I experiencing?
Well, you're experiencing authenticity in action, right? So when you own and embody your message, you feel it. Words actually have energy. And I know you said you didn't want to get all hashtag woo woo, and that cracks me up, but there's truth to this. Words do have energy. It's a proven fact, right? So you have to choose your words carefully. And if you don't embody the words that you're using in your marketing, and if they're not in alignment with you, you can totally tell. And people are going to immediately be turned off. Trust will be broken. And you really need to go back to the drawing board and look at your values and the mission of your company and how you can bring everything back into alignment.
Yep. And I don't want, when I was doing a little research on this topic, one of the other things that came up is people talking about brand integrity, sort of what does your brand look like and sound like across platforms? And
Yes.
I don't want to skip over that. You want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's really important. In fact, so many people are confused about branding, and it's in essence everything that you do in your business and how it makes people feel, right? So let's just simplify it in that way. So it does mean that your image is highly important, but many people think that just having a logo constitutes a brand, and it does not. Like I said earlier, my brand isn't going to go out and have a glass of wine with someone, but I will. Your logo has to be a bigger part of your marketing, your advertising, your communications, all of that. So it's one piece of it. And it is important to make sure that everything ties together. So not only visually, but your messaging and also the promises that you're delivering. Because again, you can promise the moon, but if you don't deliver, then your brand reputation will be ruined. And
oh, absolutely. I want to say something, I want to pull out this tweet from Gary McIntyre. He says, honesty and integrity are different. Honesty is telling the truth. Integrity is being truthful. Very nice.
Yes, that is good. I like it.
Like that. That is a retweetable. Right
it
there.
Is.
Right to you, Gary. All right. So I think that's a really, really important point. So, and the reason I think it's an important point is, which is our next question here, all about marketing and brand integrity in the digital age. So we talked a little bit about looking the same way, and there are some practical things involved there. Like, I saw this on a Facebook post, and this is something I've known about for a long time, and that is like your name. You know, people who have the name, let's say like Robert, do people call you Bob? Do they call you Robert? Or someone that's like a Christopher? Are you Christopher? Are you Chris? And being consistent across all your platforms and how you're known. Another one is like a David Meerman Scott. He goes by David Meerman Scott, right? Those three names are always together. So there's an integrity there. So what are some other, why is important in the digital age? And what are some tips about how to have brand integrity in the digital age, even beyond the basics like that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think it's really important to realize that in the digital age, and really in any age, but especially now, we are creating a digital footprint. And so everything that you tweet, everything that you Facebook, everything that you post to Pinterest, everything that you comment on any other platform, LinkedIn, you name it, across the platforms. I'm sure I'm missing one, not trying to leave anyone out, but the truth is you have now a digital footprint, and that all represents your brand. And so it's really interesting now because you have to be very careful, especially with larger organizations that have team members and different people working for them. There are now codes of ethics that are created for even people's personal lives when it comes to representing themselves and their affiliation with the company, because it can all affect everything. So it's important to really keep an eye out on that and to keep an eye out on what people are saying about you. I personally set Google alerts so that I'm alerted when people are writing about my business, so that I can take a look at that. And if there's anything that comes up, any comments, positive or negative, to make sure that you fully answer those, period. Even if it's a negative one, you don't want to engage the trolls, so to speak, but you do want to address real concerns, because that shows how you handle any kind of adversity. And that happens sometimes in business, and people want to know how you handle that too. And that's all a part of it, of the digital footprint. It's all a part of upholding the brand integrity. It all works together.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important point that you're making. You know, actually, a conversation I was on earlier with a friend of mine who's also a writer, and she's more of a journalist writer. And we were talking about publications, and we were talking about this trend towards like getting more clicks, getting more, you know, the whole clickbait. And even the content, she said one of her frustrations is that it's almost like we keep escalating the content and we keep escalating things. And at some point, you know, like how much can you overstate something, you know, like, like I'm going to be simple about it, but like, you know, even using the word awesome. I use the word awesome a lot, and I hate when I do that, but I do. And it, you know, that word means something big, and you can overstate things for the effect of getting clickbait or getting clicks or getting traffic. But how can you have integrity in your messaging and still get engagement and still get traffic, you know?
Well, I mean, you just have to be real, quite frankly. That's why people want to play and engage with me. I speak what's on my mind. I think I shared this with you. It was a couple weeks ago. I wrote something on Facebook to the effect of, what if I don't want to slay, crush, or dominate anything? Can you relate? ? And it was hilarious because I got over 200 engagements, a bunch of different comments. People could really relate to it. I wasn't fishing really for anything. That was just what was on my mind, and I posted it. And so I think keeping it real is important. And also what I have found, especially in my body of work, is that you just have to treat people like people. It's very, very important. And the clickbait, like you mentioned, and the bait and switch, as it's been called for many, many decades, is really damaging people. It's just like people saying, you can get the book for free, and then you click in and you have to pay shipping. Just tell people they've got to pay shipping. That's
exactly.
Just be honest. I mean, really, because what happens is, and of course, I'm probably not the best test market for these things because I've been around and seen it all and I immediately am turned off and their reputation is damaged with me. Even very well-known people who I respect, I've seen using some of those techniques and I'm immediately turned off. And I know this is true of many other people too. They get very disappointed. They want to trust people. They want to be heard and seen and understood, and they want to do business with you. But if you ruin that trust by using clickbait or bait and switch, you're not going to get them back.
So what's a person to do, Lisa? How do you start building messages with integrity? How do we do this kind of thing? And how do I don't want to, politics in and of itself doesn't interest me. What does interest me is I like the conflicting things I see out there. One, I see studies that say people are skeptical. I mean, and skepticism is at an all-time high. I look at the Edelman Trust Barometer and I see trust scores plummeting for some of the biggest, we don't trust our government. We're barely, in professions like doctors and lawyers. So trust is low. And yet at the same time, we're also wanting to believe things that we want to believe are true. What is a small business owner to do? Because those seem like they're conflicted to me. If you're marketing something, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I think the best thing that any of us can do is to stay true to our values and to maintain that optimism and to not get pulled into the fray. And, you mentioned politics, and I purposely stay away from that as well because I just see people behaving very badly because they get so triggered by topics, and I choose to not engage in that. And so it really is a choice, and we can market with integrity by simply realizing that marketing is all about building relationships. And so it's very important that we acknowledge and understand the challenges that our ideal clients or customers are having, and we acknowledge them with empathy. And then we're able to offer a solution that we might have to help. And I think being of service is really important. And also demonstrating our value proposition is important. So you have to be able to show proof that you can do what you can do. And when you're able to tell that brand story and that information easily and succinctly for every single revenue stream that you have, because each revenue stream likely has its own bit and piece of the brand story and different value proposition, people with the information to make you the natural choice to do business with. Whether you have a product, a service, a brick and mortar, an online business, doesn't matter. This is universal and it's all about communication. So quickly, if you simply acknowledge the challenge and you offer a solution and empower people with information about why you're the best choice, and then you can just extend a friendly invitation. You don't have to use hard sell, pushy tactics or any of that. And that's kind of why I'm beating the drum of integrity so much, is that I found that this is very true and very doable. And a lot of the techniques that people are teaching out there, like the problem, agitate, and solve approach and poking at pain points, is not working because people don't want to be agitated. They don't want to be, promoted into a heightened emotional frenzy and then purchase something, because actually what that does and what these techniques do is it perpetuates buyer's remorse.
Oh my God, this is like a huge thing. I have to tweet this thing that you said. Maybe you're tweeting it yourself, but I've just got to retweet it.
Yeah, I'm not tweeting it out, but I'm sitting with that.
Don't want to be agitated.
Mm-hmm.
So forget the problem, agitate. Oh my God, I can't spell. Solution, formula. So what you're saying is the best formula is just to tell it like it is, what a concept that might be.
Well, and what's really funny about this is it's that simple, right? It's not always easy though, because people are programmed to think that they have to use these manipulative tactics to get results. And in fact, it's really funny. Over on Facebook, I think the description about what I do is that I help people create marketing messages with integrity, with an emphasis on passion points instead of pain points. And I had a woman send a message to me and say, oh my gosh, I'm fascinated by this, but everything I've been taught is the exact opposite. Does this even work? And I'm thinking, well, I've been in business for over a decade now. I think it's working.
Yeah. Well, let's get down into the nitty gritty and give folks some practical tips. So when you're working on creating a brand message that has integrity, what are some specific things folks can do to, brainstorm and start flushing out a message that has integrity?
Well, the first thing is to do a values exercise. And this is something that I cannot stress enough. Get clear on your values. I am absolutely blown away at how many people who have not carved out time to give their values consideration. I mean, they may know them, they may already be kind of guided by them, but setting aside some dedicated time to really think about what your core values are and what really matters most to you. That's crucial. And it also needs to be in alignment with your mission. And so I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I'll expand a bit. What I've found is oftentimes when people are having problems in their business, they've been coached or taught to go after the so-called low-hanging fruit or whatever's going to make them the quickest money, the fastest. But it's not something they want to do really, and it's not something that they're in alignment with. It's really often not in alignment at all with their values. So what they can do is then look at those values, reassess the mission, and sometimes let go of something to create something that's actually going to be in more alignment. And what will happen is it's totally possible to create long-term sustainability when everything is aligned in that way. So sometimes we hold on to things just because it's what we've always done, even if it's not really working that well anymore. And it's okay to change it up and to evolve. And in fact, it's really important to do that. And it's really important to be very transparent about why you're making changes and why you're going to do things differently.
Well, that's one area where we can definitely, nothing is cast in stone, especially these days. And it's okay to learn something and change. I mean, we've seen brands like McDonald's make big changes, right? And
Right.
they can still stay true to their value of getting good food fast. And but they can also adapt and include healthy choices.
Well, they've evolved because they've listened, and this is key, they've listened to their customers or potential customers. So what they did is they actually increased their customer base by listening and offering healthy choices for people who probably weren't going to come there otherwise, right? So this is really key, and we can take note of what they did and look at that and look at our own businesses and think, what do I need to let go of, or what do I need to expand? And that's okay, because here's the thing with business, just like websites are not set it and forget it. It's very much an evolution. And as we change and grow as people, so will our brand, so will our message. And it's so important to maintain that transparency and that communication with the people we serve so they know why we're doing these things.
That's such a great point, right? Because is it possible, and I don't know if you have examples, if you don't, that's totally okay. I'm just kind of thinking aloud that if you share your pending evolution of thought about something, aren't you liable to attract more customers? Right? Like I'm actually even thinking about, like, was it Domino's? Who was it that they were like, our pizza is really nasty. We're like totally going to reformulate.
Right. Yes. Yes.
I thought that was absolutely fantastic, right? And I want to acknowledge Suzanne Stewart, who says, keep your message clear so no misunderstandings can occur. When you have no misunderstandings, then there's no mistrust. Amen, my woman.
Yes,
right?
yes, that is brilliant and so true. And so many people try to use fancy words or be really clever and complicated, but really clarity is key when it comes to your messaging and your brand. It's that simple.
I actually, now I have worked with Verizon Wireless, and I love Verizon Wireless. I am very, very loyal to them.
Mm-hmm.
But when they introduced the quote unquote trade-in program for their iPhones, I about had 10 conniption fits, right? Because trade-in means I give you one thing and you give me something else. Trade-in does not mean you buy something and then we ship you a new one. That's purchasing.
Right. Right. Well, see, and that's a great example. It's so important to do what you say you're going to do. And there's so many people trying to, really manipulate a little bit the facts so that they can generate more sales. And what does that do? It loses customer loyalty, period. And that's what people aren't understanding. And they think that, a quick sale is going to help because maybe they need some cash. That's great, but it's not great for the long run. It's just not.
And it's, to your point, it's sort of like you were saying, that's the same thing as the shipping, like free book, but then you have to pay for shipping. It's totally okay. I want the product. I'm going to get the product. It just, like, don't say it's a trade-in if you're going to charge me money. That's
Right.
like, that was my whole thing. It's like, just say what it is. It's okay. It's not a problem, and I don't think that they're doing that anymore. I think they probably got a lot of backlash for that. But to Suzanne's point, that's what made me think of that. To Suzanne's point, it's when you're clear, then there's not going to be a misunderstanding. And I just love your point, Suzanne. Misunderstandings create mistrust. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Rock on.
And that's why we have to talk about it. And we have to realize that just because my values are one thing, they may mean something completely different to another person. Just like when I feel that I'm acting in integrity, what I'm doing may not be in alignment with someone else. And so we have to have these conversations. We have to build these relationships. And we have to follow up too. One of the things that I see people are just failing to do is they're just treating people as transactional, right? So you do a job and you're done and it's over, and you don't check in to say, hey, was there something else I could do for you? Or what could I do differently? And so this is kind of a little bit of the behind the scenes marketing and brand management, but it's super important because it's much easier to retain and do additional business with a current client than it is to go out and continually get new clients.
Bingo. So let's kind of shift topics just a bit, and let's talk about protecting your integrity, because, let's assume, and I don't know if you have examples of this, I know there probably are in the coaching and consulting space, right? For as many people as there are, you're going to have two different points of view about something and a message, and you've got to protect. Once you've developed your brand message and all that stuff, you've got to protect it. I know that I have an attorney client who is very, very judicious. Is that like a pun? He's really, and most of the attorney folks that I know who are entrepreneurs are very, very careful about the words they use and what they say and what they promise. And usually I'm not the one that plays this role, but in that particular group, I'm always pushing a little bit like, can you say this? Can you say this? And they're like, I don't want to say that, because they're protecting their brand integrity. So, what are some ways that you can protect your brand integrity? Or maybe what are some things that could go wrong that could hurt your brand integrity?
Well, as far as protecting, it's really important to trademark your business name and your logo and images. That's super important. And then also, of course, you want to make sure that your written material is copyrighted, which is also very important. And this is actually something that when I first started Right On Creative, many years ago, well over a decade, there was another business that had the same name that was basically hijacking a bunch of my web traffic because of that. And so I have my business name trademarked. And so I had to actually call in my attorney to do a cease and desist because they were impacting my brand integrity by diluting it with their message. And so, that's kind of an extreme example. And we were able to, amicably, luckily, solve that. But you have to stand behind your brand. That's really important. And so as far as some things that could easily impact that, it's so simple. Just not doing what you promise. That's going to impact it. Not being in full alignment with your messaging, not following up on your promises. And, gosh, I'm trying to think of some other examples that I have seen out there. And, well, I think just be honest. Don't use the bait and switch stuff. That's going to hurt you. That's really, if it's not free, don't say it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what it is. I think, people are afraid in a couple areas. People are either afraid to use, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this, authentic language, like to write the way you speak. They're
Hmm.
afraid to do that because, I don't know, they don't want to show they're human. I think some small business owners fall into the trap of thinking I have to talk like a big business in order to get those sales. And then on the other hand, you've got people who are over promising, like the whole say anything deal. And really the answer is the same for both, right? You just speak in your authentic voice. Don't call something what it isn't, right?
Right.
And now we come to Ken's question. Ken must have been sneaking on my script because this was the question that happens. What happens if you discover that your brand integrity doesn't match that of your ideal customer? I am not sure if I've had that experience. Have you ever had that experience? Have you seen that in action before?
I haven't had that experience just because I know how clear I need to be and how important it is to that my values are aligned with my mission and that I'm clear on who my ideal clients are, right? So I personally haven't had that happen, although I have been approached by people who were not in alignment with my brand messaging and whom I chose not to work with because I knew they were using techniques and tactics that I was not in alignment with. So I've turned business away based on that.
I think that's smart, right? And I've seen this happen actually in bigger companies, or maybe, I mean, I think that sometimes as a small business owner, we get really enamored with like a big brand name. Like, I want to have this customer name on my list.
Yes.
And you want that, whether it's a social proof kind of thing or something. But, one of the ways that integrity doesn't match up, and this is how I explain it. These big brands that are very sexy and awesome to have on your customer list because you can share that with people. One of the things I've noticed is, there might be only 1 to 5 of people in your company, but they have an entire department for one specific thing. So they've got tons of people to do one little thing, and they need lots and lots of papers and lots of, there's bureaucracy, there's all this other kind of stuff. And that could ultimately, the way you operate your business and the way, you move projects forward doesn't match what they need. And that can cause a lot. And I mean, it's a different kind of integrity. It's not just about truth and it's not just about clarity of conversation. There could be this idea of like how we do business.
Yes. Yes. That is extremely important. And so, putting systems in place to manage that is crucial. And I know when I was first setting up my business and had someone who was going to be answering emails for me and things like that, that I put together specific scripts. I didn't want them to read them verbatim, but if this happens, this is how we handle it, right? So it's
Right,
almost like
right.
it's a standard operating procedure manual in a sense. And it doesn't have to be super detailed, but it does need to you do need to make sure that everyone involved in the day-to-day operations of your brand and your business understand what you stand for, understand how you want things to be handled, and that there is a protocol.
Exactly. I love what Gary McIntyre says. Oh my God, I'm responding to him.
Okay, great. I'm like, what did he say? I'm going in to look.
I'm going to tell you. He said he was responding. Oh, wait, that was the wrong one. Oh my God, don't lose it. He was responding to question 6, which has to do with what are specific things you can do to show or prove that your brand has integrity. And he said, this is a double-edged sword. I'd be worried if I had to strategize demonstrating integrity. And then I responded and said, yes, your actions prove your integrity every day. And I think he's hitting on the very thing that I just feel so strongly about. This idea of there's business communication and marketing communications, right? But you can't have those not be a lot, you can't have those be different than who you are, than what your values are, because you're
Right.
going to do what you're going to do. You're going to be who you are. So you can't be a friendly company. You can't create this friendly logo and this friendly brand only to be very rude on the phone.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So, well, actually, so this brings us to our next question, which is how you can lose your brand integrity. Oh my God, probably too easy to do.
Yes, it really is. I mean, number one, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, and it seems like we're oversimplifying it, but that is in fact true. I mean, it just is. So there's so many things that I mean, I'm sure that you've had specific experiences where businesses have promised you one thing and then they didn't deliver and you're done. But not only are you done, you're telling your friends and family.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the thing that all the customer service people say, and this is absolutely true, I know I've had this experience myself, it's okay if you can't fulfill on your commitment if you tell me in advance. Like if you tell me that there's like, we had an agreement and you, as soon as you know, and typically the rule is as soon as you know, the instant you know that something is up and you can't fulfill, you have got to communicate that to everyone that matters and not pretend like it's going to happen when it's not.
Yes. That is key. In fact, owning your mistakes is one of the biggest and most important pieces of integrity. Because if you don't, then again, trust is broken. But we're all human too, right? So people do make mistakes, and there needs to be some room for that. There needs to be room for being honest. There needs to be room for forgiveness. There needs to be room for course correction. And not everyone takes the time to do any of that, quite frankly. And the worst thing you can do is not address something.
Correct. And you know, back to straight talk, right? And this takes practice, not going to lie, you know, because we as human beings don't want to look bad. We want to look good. We want to be right. We want to be helpful. We want to be all these things that we say that we are to our clients and our customers. But sometimes it just doesn't work that way. And I got to tell you, there is something really powerful in just saying what so. Say, you know what? I told you that I was going to do X, Y, and Z. And that's like not going to happen. I don't even know what I was thinking to have promised you that. Right? What's the impact? How can I make it right? This is what I can do. Let's renegotiate. That's a big part of integrity, renegotiating. You can renegotiate.
Yes, you totally can. And it's okay for that to happen. And it's okay for you to set very clear boundaries and say, look, I can offer you this contract for this amount of time, but after that amount of time, it's done. And we need to renegotiate and look at rates and look at changing scope. You actually have to do that in business. There has to be some room for negotiation and change. There really does. I mean, of course, once you've agreed upon a contract, most of the time that's signed, sealed, and delivered. However, keeping that line of conversation open is going to just extend and expand the possibilities.
Exactly. I actually have a practical example of exactly this. I was in a contractual relationship with a brand, and everything's laid out. You're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and blah, 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 right? Well, ended up I had a technical difficulty, and what I thought was being collected was like the system just didn't collect it, like didn't, right? It's not like we forgot to turn it on. It just didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I did, other than like cry and have about 10 conniption fits, like all by myself, but the next thing I did is I was like, okay, so I'm going to set the context for this conversation. And I out and out, as soon as I figured out what was wrong, I got my thoughts together and I called them up directly. And the first thing I said was, this part here where we said we were going to do this, well, I've had an issue. What I said was going to happen didn't happen. I feel terrible. I just want you to know, in partnership, I'm here to do. What can we do to support you in this? Since I can't get these back because they never got collected, what can I do? And I was blown away by the generosity of their response. So I guess what the message in all this is, even when you think you have bad news and you think, I was afraid they were going to sue me or something, they would have been within their rights.
Right.
So how you approach this integrity conversation, because I could have been defensive and mean and all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have been exactly that way as well. But because I approached it in that particular way, they were, oh my God. And all they asked was like something stupid, simple, like, can you send an email? I'm like, really? Okay. Yeah. So it just
sometimes we overcomplicate it, but when we build those relationships, that's where the magic happens. That's where we can have those candid conversations, and we can, deepen the relationship and see what's next, as opposed to, being so by the book. And I'm not saying you shouldn't honor contracts. You absolutely have to. However, when you own your mistakes, people will forgive you most of the time, right?
absolutely.
And
and
I
it's how
think
you approach it.
yeah, it kind of goes back to the whole, personal brand versus corporate brand or business brand. It's all connected. So it's very important to just make sure that that's in perfect alignment. But some people are afraid to speak out and have those conversations. And I think it's because we've been taught that way, especially if we come from corporate, how corporate used to be structured, and it's changing and evolving too, where business was business, your personal life was your personal life. And I believe that business is personal. It's very personal. And especially when you are not in the corporate world anymore, and you're able to fully express yourself, which entrepreneurs and smaller business owners have more leeway to do, because we're defining the brand and how we want that to appear and be. So I think that's just an important thing for people to sit with and think about. It's okay to be you, because guess what? You and your brand are going to attract the exact people that you want to play with when you're clear.
Exactly. So we're coming back to our evolution question as we wind our chat down. And I think we've come to the agreement that, what is the balance between, keeping the core spirit and soul of your brand and then making evolutionary changes? I don't know. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, what I think is really important is that we do grow and change, and we have to acknowledge that, right? But I think there's a big piece of brand integrity, and some people refer to it as brand equity, is having staying power and being able to stand by that brand for the long term. There's a big trend that happens within the coaching and consulting arena, where people think they just need to blow everything up and rebrand because they want to get more business or new energy. And actually, sometimes that can hurt you.
Ah.
And I kind of think reinvention is a cop-out. I'm more about evolving, because I don't think we can fully reinvent ourselves. I know that we can grow and evolve, and we're still going to, maybe let some pieces go and add new pieces as we do so. But that's kind of one of the trends that I've seen, that I've spoken out, pretty clearly about, and said, look, you don't have to do that, and with good reason. I've had people come to me who were being coached to rebrand when they had a solid brand, and by doing that, it would have actually negated all of the work they had done for a very long time. So I've saved, companies and people thousands upon thousands of dollars in rebranding efforts when it's not necessary, if they just take a look at a brand assessment to see where they really are and the little shifts that they need to make to increase cash flow. Doesn't mean you need to rebrand your entire business and have a new image. You may just need to make some small shifts that make big impact.
Talk a little bit more about those small shifts, right? So, like, for example, I have not, quote unquote, rebranded, but I have had to make shifts because of an evolution. When I started DIY Marketers, nobody knew that there were all these platforms that could really help you automate your marketing, multiply yourself. And they were like super, super inexpensive. And I was familiar with them, and that's what I was sharing. And that's where the brand came from, the whole DIY. Right? Well, needless to say, as the years went on, actually the pendulum swung another way. And people not only knew that there were platforms out there, they were overwhelmed by the platform. Right? So I've had to evolve in helping people choose what they were going to do. And so now the message went from look at all this stuff down to simplify, simplify, simplify.
Which is okay because it's still in the context of what you do. I mean, Right on Creative has evolved a lot throughout the years. You know, for a long time, I was only doing copywriting projects for people. And then I realized, you know, that's great. I helped with that brand messaging, but I can also help with overseeing the entire brand. I can help with the consulting around creating marketing and advertising budgets. And marketing and advertising are different, and people sometimes don't even know that. So I started doing retained coaching, consulting, and mentoring as well. And now it's all still under the Right on Creative umbrella, but I do retreats and workshops and trainings and speaking, which I never thought I would speak. Honestly, I did not set out to be a speaker, but my message has become, you know, in demand. So I now do that as well. And it's okay because it's still all under that the messaging and communications umbrella. And so it is still upholding the brand integrity. Whereas if I would have just branched out and started doing something completely different, it might not have made sense and it might have confused my audience.
Perfect. So that brings us into the final question of the afternoon, which is, what is the best way to communicate the fact that you're evolving and changing? Is there like a big campaign or big brands might have a campaign, like let's say, for example, I'm thinking about Dove soaps, and then they started that whole, the Be Real Beauty, whatever they called it.
Right.
What can a small business do that's like doable?
Really just communicate and listen to your customers. And here's the thing that is, it's a little bit challenging, and I will say that when you add or take away a product or a service or something that you're doing, there are likely going to be some people that are disappointed because some people really don't like change. And unfortunately, we live in an ever-changing world. And so one of the best tips I can give anyone is to try to embrace that change and at least understand it. And when people understand why, they have a better idea adjusting, or a better way. It's easier for them to adjust, right? Whereas if you just say, I'm not doing that anymore, period, I'm done, or I'm going to add this new thing and not telling anyone why, then that leaves some question and some doubt in people's minds. So it is important. And sometimes you're going to need to have some conversations with people. If you decide to let something go, especially, it's important to make sure that the people who are still interested in that can connect with someone else who can provide that service or that product. And I'm really big on connection. I actually believe that we're officially in the collaboration economy and that people are the true currency. And so we have to treat each other as such.
Exactly. And it's funny, you and I were like grooving on the same thing on this last question, because one of my tips was to enroll your community in navigating the change. Back to the pizza example, I think it's like they really listened. They understood what was going on, and instead of trying to like cover it up and the whole put lipstick on a pig thing, they really said, we're making a change, and and then just even making fun of themselves. So I love, and you said customers and clients like to grow with you, keep them informed. So that's like right along those same lines, that keep people together, keep them in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's so simple. It seems kind of silly, really. I mean, all we have to do is communicate and talk to one another. Wow, that's amazing. And guess what? It's going to actually help you get more business. Whoa.
Exactly. And like Suzanne Stewart is just rocking it out on this chat. She says, tell a different story, tell a better story from new, better relationships, strengthen old ones. So I think that's really interesting, this idea of telling the story. And I think this is where people fall short. They tell this like vapid and empty story, where, to quote, I don't know who said it first. I actually happen to have heard it at a Suzanne Evans thing, where they say your mess is your message.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
And that's that, people relate to stories, especially, and this is the counterintuitive part, especially if it's a story that where you fumbled or failed, or like something happened and you learned. It's the hero's journey.
Yeah, I think there's really truth to that. And also, I think that some people take that to the extremes and embellish sometimes, and you can actually tell when that's happening too. So that's a way to damage brand integrity as well. But the story is so important. And what I tell people too is that not only do you have to have a strategy and message for every single revenue stream, you need a story, you need case studies, you need value proposition for all of those things. And so I think people get stuck on the overall brand messaging and forget that you're going to sometimes have different messages for the different people that you serve. So if I'm actually going to be working with an organization to do a workshop or training or come in and talk to their corporate communications leaders, my conversation is going to be very different than my conversation with a solopreneur who's just trying to craft their messaging, right? So we have to be very cognizant too of the fact that we may have an ideal client base, and we also may have a secondary client base. And so it's important to just massage everything around who we're serving.
Awesome. Awesome. Lisa, can you believe that we are at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific? But before we go, I want to just share a couple things. Steve Dodd jumped on and said, one effective option is to earn it through the reach of influencers. You know, I think he makes a really good point, right? When you said building relationships, and that's one thing that influencers are really, really good at, right? You know, but I would say that there are some pitfalls there in that a lot of people want to reach out to what I would call A-list influencers who may not value you as much. You know, just say before we go, real quick, what are your thoughts on using and leveraging influencers to communicate your message?
Well, I mean, I think as long as it's in alignment with your brand, that's okay. And in fact, if they're actually brand champions and brand evangelists who totally believe in you and are not just paid spokespeople, that's golden.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you guys, if you have questions on brand integrity, Lisa, where can we get more information? What should folks do to reach out to you?
Well, absolutely. We're connected here on Twitter, which is fantastic. And you can always give me a call at 1-866-620-1428 or send me an email to lisa@rightoncreative.com. So that's it. Oh, and visit my website too and check out the free goodies I have there for you. And awesome blog posts too that don't even require any opt-in. You can just read and learn.
What a concept. What a concept. Awesome. So I'm going to let you go, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here and starting off 2017 for us with your awesome insights.
Thank you. This has been fun.